Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's FM Academy webinar. This webinar is going to be led by Alan Kirtlink. I am Greg Lane from Skeleton Key. I'm here to introduce Alan and get us started. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. Today's class is FileMaker from Anywhere, and the instructor is Alan Kirtlink. FM Academy is a consortium of leading FileMaker development companies in the United States. Our purpose is to further educate FileMaker users and developers to encourage best practices and foster further adoption of the FileMaker platform. If you do have a question, we will have some time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. Please use the GoToMeeting interface to enter your question, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. Alan Kirtlink is our instructor today. He is a senior developer and trainer at Skeleton Key. He is FileMaker certified in all versions from 7 to 13. He's also a FileMaker authorized trainer, and he's been using and developing with FileMaker for more than 20 years. Skeleton Key is a FileMaker Business Alliance Platinum member. We're also FileMaker trainers, and we have 9 FileMaker 13 certified developers on staff. So with that, I'm going to hand the ball over to Alan. He's going to get started with the presentation. And as I said earlier, please enter your questions in the control panel, and we'll get to those at the end. Thanks very much.
Hi, and thanks for joining us today for this FileMaker FM Academy webinar. We're going to be talking today about using FileMaker from anywhere. We're going to be looking at all the different ways that you can get to FileMaker remotely. We want to especially focus on changes in FileMaker 13 that affect remote access. We're going to look at a comparison of FileMaker Pro, FileMaker Go, custom web publishing, and WebDirect when they're used remotely. We're going to briefly talk about differences between WebDirect and custom web publishing. We'll talk about how to improve performance for remote users using the perform script on server script step. And then at the end, we'll have a little time for questions and answers. So let's start off by talking about changes in FileMaker 13 specifically that affect remote access. The first change that we want to talk about is the fact that in 13, Server and Server Advanced have been consolidated into a single product. Previously, we had one product that gave us kind of basic access to FileMaker hosted files, but then we needed to purchase Server Advanced if we wanted to use instant web publishing or use ODBC or JDBC connections. In FileMaker 13, they've consolidated those products. We now get ODBC and JDBC included at no additional cost. And they've changed the licensing model for access via FileMaker Go and FileMaker WebDirect, which we will look at a little more closely in just a moment. Other new features in FileMaker 13 are that we now have custom SSL certificates that we can use for FileMaker Server. Those can be purchased from one of several certificate authorities and allow you to provide an extra layer of authentication to your solution. Along those same lines of added security, we now have a feature called encryption at rest. For several years with FileMaker, we've been able to use what we've called encryption in flight, meaning that we could encrypt the connections between clients and the FileMaker server. But now in 13, we have encryption at rest, which, when enabled through FileMaker Pro Advanced, allows us to encrypt a file before we host it on our server. Once the file is encrypted, before the file can be hosted, the encryption passphrase has to be entered. What this does for us is that it just gives us an extra layer of security in that if that file is ever stolen from the server, it's now, in addition to the FileMaker security, it's also protected by an additional layer of encryption. Let's talk about licensing a little more. Licensing for FileMaker Pro in version 13 has stayed the same. Just as it always has been, if you buy Pro or Pro Advanced, your purchase of that product allows you to connect to a file that is hosted on any server or hosted by another copy of FileMaker Pro. Similarly with custom web publishing, the licensing has stayed the same in that when you purchased FileMaker Server, that includes your license for all of your custom web publishing connections. What has changed in 13 is the licensing for FileMaker Go and WebDirect. Previously in FileMaker 12, FileMaker Go could access any hosted file on any FileMaker server. Now what happens is that we get a FileMaker connection license that is purchased separately from the FileMaker server. Your FileMaker server will come with a single connection that will allow you to connect either one copy of FileMaker Go or one client using WebDirect to your FileMaker server. This allows you to test your installation and make sure it works correctly. But additional licenses for connection through either of those products are sold separately. Now those connection licenses are shared between the two products. So if you buy a 10-pack of connection licenses for Server 13, that will allow you to access any combination, allow any up to 10 users either using Go or WebDirect to access your server. That could be 10 from Go, 10 from WebDirect, or a combination of the two. There is unfortunately no way to specify that a certain number of users go to Go and a certain number go to WebDirect, short of just turning off access completely for Go or WebDirect. So now let's talk about the various ways that you can connect to a remote copy of FileMaker. The first one we want to talk about is FileMaker Pro. To connect to a hosted file using FileMaker Pro, we're either going to host it using a copy of FileMaker Pro, which can host up to 5 users, or FileMaker Server, which can go up to an unlimited number of FileMaker Pro connections. Now, unlimited is in parentheses there. The actual number of clients that you will be able to connect with will be mainly determined by how well you've architected your solution and what kind of hardware you're running on. The pros of connecting through FileMaker Pro are that you have access to a multiple window interface. Using FileMaker Pro, you can access the database schema, meaning if you want to make changes to scripts, add fields, change layouts, you can do that through Pro or Pro Advanced while the solution is hosted. You also have access to plugins created by third-party companies. Cons to connecting through FileMaker Pro is that you do have a slightly higher license cost. Custom web publishing. With custom web publishing, you must have the file hosted on a FileMaker server. Unlike FileMaker Pro, you cannot use a copy of FileMaker Pro to host a file and then access it through custom web publishing. Custom web publishing is going to also require that you have PHP development skills in order to build your interface. Rather than using a interface built in FileMaker Pro, we'll be accessing it completely through PHP pages. The maximum number of connections through custom web publishing is 2,000, and that is a much higher number than we have in any of our other clients. But part of the reason for that is that when you access a solution using custom web publishing, you are not keeping that connection up all of the time. The connection is only open for the duration of the request. So if I hit a page that performs a find against my database, let's say it searches for all contacts who have an address in the United States, the connection time is actually only the time it takes to make that request and the time it takes the server to process it and send back the answer. As soon as that data is sent back to my client, the connection is closed. So the pros of accessing your database this way are that your license costs are quite low. Your bandwidth requirements are also very low because your communications with the FileMaker server, in this case, are limited to just your data. You're not sending any information about the layouts or the interface itself. You're really just sending data back and forth. It supports a large number of users since connections only last while a request is being processed, and it's easy to integrate with other web technologies. The cons to custom web publishing are that the development costs tend to be significantly higher. As we all know, one of the great things about FileMaker is that it has a great interface and set of developer tools for creating layouts and the entire user experience. With custom web publishing, all UI has to be developed through PHP. We also have limited access to other FileMaker native features. FileMaker Go. FileMaker Go is the product that FileMaker released a few years ago that runs on iOS devices. In order to access hosted files, those files must be hosted in either FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Server. If you're accessing files hosted on FileMaker Pro, the maximum number of connections that you can have are 5. If you're accessing a file hosted on FileMaker Server, your number of simultaneous connections are limited by the number of licenses that you've purchased and by your server hardware. The pros of this method of accessing FileMaker files are that you can take advantage of mobile device features such as GPS, cameras, audio recording, etc. You also have access to user interfaces developed in FileMaker Pro, so your screens are going to be very similar to what you have when you access this with FileMaker Pro. Cons are that you have no native support for plugins through FileMaker Go, and that you have no access to your database schema. So while we can open the files, we cannot make any changes to layouts, scripts, tables, etc. WebDirect. WebDirect requires FileMaker Server to act as a host. No accessing files without server. You cannot host them, for instance, using regular FileMaker Pro or Pro Advanced. In addition, because of the higher load that this puts on your server, it may require a second server dedicated to web publishing. We will talk about this a little bit more in just a moment as to how many users you can get on a single device before you need to start looking at connecting some of your users or moving that web publishing capability off to a separate server. The maximum number of connections are limited by the connections purchased to your purchased and your server hardware. Now, if you've looked at the connection list on FileMaker's website, you will see that the theoretical number of connections here are listed at 50. That is not a hard and fast number. That is, as we say here, it is limited by you can go beyond 50, but going that high is going to require some pretty good hardware as well as a solution that is kind of performance tuned specifically for WebDirect. Pros of this solution are that it provides an experience that is very similar to that of FileMaker Pro. It requires no knowledge of PHP to create a web interface, and you are able to access this without purchasing separate individual copies of FileMaker Pro. The cons are that your performance can be affected by the design of your layouts and your choice of theme, and that a moderate number of users can bog a server down pretty quickly. Now, since FileMaker WebDirect is new in 13, we want to take a little bit more time and explore what is different about it. First, let's talk about what it's here to replace. FileMaker WebDirect replaces instant web publishing and provides many of the same features. To the end user, it's probably almost transparent to go between instant web publishing and WebDirect, but as we'll see here in a moment, a lot of new features have been added that weren't available to us previously in IWP. It's a FileMaker client that enables users to interact with the database hosted on a FileMaker server using a web browser. Users don't need to install any additional software, which is a big plus. Any WebKit based web browser can be used. Now, obviously there are version limitations as well, but when we say WebKit, WebKit is the underlying engine that Internet Explorer, Safari, and Chrome are all based on. Firefox has its own web rendering engine, and while Firefox certainly can be used to access a WebDirect solution, since it's not based on WebKit, there are no guarantees about how it will render your pages. WebDirect works using HTML to define the structure of the page, cascading style sheets, and that is CSS3 to control the appearance of the page. And by this we mean that the CSS is actually used to translate the theme that you pick in FileMaker to the user's web browser. It also uses JavaScript to enable interactions, for example, clicking on a button or switching from one tab to another. When we compare WebDirect to Instant Web Publishing, which it replaced, WebDirect does add a significant number of features. The first of which, and most notable probably, is that you have implicit record commits. You may, that's kind of a vague term in a way, but what we mean by this is that in instant web publishing, you may recall that when you, say, searched for a record and viewed it in your browser, before you actually could interact with it, you would click into it and there would be a brief pause as the record was loaded. You would also have to do something to exit that record to commit it and save it, which was a very un-FileMaker-like way to interact with it. That was a little off-putting, I think, for some users. But with WebDirect, that is much more transparent now. You click into a record and it's much more like the experience you have with FileMaker Pro. We've also got access now to conditional formatting, modern layout themes, so all of the themes that were introduced in 12 and have been built on in 13, you now have access to using WebDirect. You now have more direct editing of container fields. Previously in IWP, you could download data that was already loaded into a container field, but you could not add anything to a container field through your web browser. It was kind of a one-way street. Now they have put some reasonable limitations on this. You'll notice that there's a 300 meg file limit to what you can upload into those containers through WebDirect, which is much smaller than what we would have through a standard FileMaker Pro client, but more than sufficient for most uses. We also have the ability to import data in tabs, CSV, DBF, merge, or XLSX format, and we can export data from our solution in tab, CSV, DBF, merge, and HTML formats. Additionally, we can now drag and drop data into fields from WebDirect. We can access the quick find. We have support for most rich text formatting. We have access to the spell checker, tooltips, keyboard commands, and most script triggers. There are two exceptions there of on object keystroke and on layout keystroke. Excuse me, I have a typo there, but beyond those two, we can use other script triggers. We can also create snapshot links from within WebDirect. So that's comparing WebDirect to instant web publishing, which it replaces. But how does WebDirect stack up against FileMaker Pro? Since this is an interface that's being implemented through a web browser, obviously there are still some limitations. And we've listed a few of those here. For instance, we do not have access to table view, custom menus, layout mode, or preview mode. We cannot import data from external data sources, such as Bento, XML, or ODBC. As we mentioned on the previous screen, we do have a couple of script triggers that we do not have access to on object keystroke and on layout keystroke. And also we cannot store container data as a reference or click objects that are located behind other layout objects. And that last one's a little bit obscure. It has to do with how layering works within FileMaker WebDirect. If you have a button that is behind another object or that's grouped together with another object, that object may function as a button correctly in FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Go, but when you go over to WebDirect, if the button is not associated with the topmost layer, you will not be able to activate that. Additional limitations are that we do have a single document interface here. By that we mean if you open a separate window in WebDirect, you will see that window, but it will cover over any other windows that you have showing. So in your browser, you won't actually see a separate browser window open, but the new window open from FileMaker's point of view will cover over the old. Only the tab key is supported for navigating between fields. A few of the conditional formatting options are not supported, and a few rich text format items are not supported. Now, these are pretty minor things, so overall, our support through WebDirect is extremely comparable to FileMaker Pro. Let's talk about WebDirect's requirements. On Windows, WebDirect can be accessed through Internet Explorer 9 or Chrome 27 or later. On OS 10, it's recommended that you use Safari 6 or Chrome 27 or later. As I mentioned earlier, all of those browsers are based on WebKit. And while Firefox generally does work fairly well to access a WebDirect solution, keep in mind that it is not officially supported, so any access that you have through that you'll want to test thoroughly. Concurrent users. Up to 6 concurrent users can be supported on your server with both the web publishing engine and the FileMaker server installed on a single machine. And what we mean by this is that during the FileMaker server installation process, you have the choice to deploy your server spread out over multiple machines or multiple servers. The most common thing that people do is install all parts of the server on the same machine, meaning the database engine, the web publishing engine, and the other various parts that get installed. The option that you do have during installation, though, is to break that up so that you can have your database engine on one server and your web publishing engine on a separate server. There are multiple reasons why you may want to do this. One could be security. You may want your database server back behind your firewall while your web publishing engine is a little bit more exposed. Or you may want to do it for performance, especially with WebDirect, since it is a little more processor intensive. It's recommended that if you get up over 7 users, concurrent users that is, you deploy that to a separate server. Now, this is a not a hard and fast rule. The main thing that's going to determine when you need to deploy to a separate server for your web publishing engine is the main determining factor is going to be what your users are doing in there and how your system has been designed. If you've created a very streamlined, very efficient database, it is possible that you could get by with a single server with more concurrent users. But rule of thumb is what you see here in front of you. If you've got 7 to 16 users, you're going to want to look at possibly deploying your web publishing engine to a separate server with at least 8 gigs of RAM and a 4-core processor. For 16 to 26 users, you'll want your web publishing engine separated out onto a server with 12 gigs of RAM and an 8-core processor, and for 27 up to 50, 16 gigs of RAM and a 12-core processor. Now, as we said earlier, 50 is not the ultimate limit to concurrent users. You can buy an unlimited number of concurrent licenses to put on your server. And as servers get faster, you'll be able to handle more and more users. But these are just kind of rules of thumb that FileMaker is providing to us. So let's take just a moment and see what WebDirect solutions look like. For demo purposes today, I'm going to be using a database that comes as a starter solution with FileMaker Pro. It also comes installed on your iOS devices if you install FileMaker Go. We're going to be using the Assets starter solution. I have populated mine with some data, but if you would like to replicate this back at your location, you can in FileMaker Pro or Pro Advanced go to the File menu and say New from Starter Solution and choose the Assets starter solution here. So as I said, I'm going to be using a slightly different version that has data already populated into it, so we can do a little looking around. I'm also going to, I've also changed my security settings to allow access through WebDirect. In order to do that, what you'll need to do is, after you've created your file, you'll need to go to Manage, Security, and for at least one privilege set that has access to the file, in this case the full access privilege set here, I have turned on access using the FileMaker Network extended privilege as well as the WebDirect extended privilege. All right, so in my file, I've already hosted it on my server, and I have enabled access through the server admin console for WebDirect. Once that's done, I'm going to open my browser. I'm going to point my browser at my server, and I'm going to make sure that I include, after my server's address, I'm going to include FMI/webd #. That tells the server to direct the browser to the WebDirect default homepage. This homepage is going to show all the files on the that are hosted on the server that have at least one account with access through WebDirect. So we're going to take a look at the asset file here. And I'm also going to open that up in FileMaker Pro Advanced. So to do that, I'm going to hit my remote button from the File Open dialog. I'm going to select my server and select that same assets file. So you can see by looking at the layout pop-up that we are actually on different layouts here. In Pro Advanced, it's taken me to the asset details layout, whereas in WebDirect, it has taken me to asset details web. This is a layout that's been tweaked by FileMaker so that it is going to look a little better on WebDirect. It's also going to only support features that and scripts that have WebDirect compatible script steps. So they've already done some of the work here for you. This is certainly something that you'll want to replicate in your own solutions. Creating layouts optimized for just WebDirect or just FileMaker Go, for instance. So you can see that while the theme does not render perfectly here, we've got a little bit of cutoff on some of these text objects. It does look very much like what we're getting in Pro, and these things could be tweaked further. So you could open this up, give yourself a little bit more room here, for instance, for the book value field, and make sure that that's going to render completely in your WebDirect environment. So as we noted earlier, unlike instant web publishing, I don't have to enter the record separately before I can interact with it. I can grab data directly out of a container field here, drop it onto my desktop, and similarly I can go the other way. Unlike instant web publishing, I can upload data to WebDirect through container fields. And so all of this has been achieved without having to do any kind of PHP development. We've simply, in FileMaker, accessed layouts that are created completely in Pro or Pro Advanced. And any changes that I make here are going to be conveyed onto the WebDirect user. So if I, for instance, don't need a fifth container field here, and I delete that off of my layout, once I exit layout mode, that forces an update in my WebDirect client. And now, as you can see, I only have 4 container fields displayed here. All right, let's take a look at perform script on server. All right, perform script on server is another new feature in FileMaker 13, and it dramatically improves our ability to access and perform various functions on our hosted databases. What this allows us to do is, in previous versions of FileMaker, whenever you performed a server or performed a script in a hosted file, the local client was actually responsible for performing all of the actions in that script. By that we mean creating new records, deleting records, anything that script did was actually being performed on the client, and those changes were then being conveyed back to the server, which meant a lot of back and forth as far as traffic goes. If you created a new record, You had to do it on the client and then convey that information back to the server. The advantage of perform script on server is that that can now be offloaded to your server to perform various tasks. We had kind of a limited version of this in previous versions of FileMaker Server when scheduled scripts were implemented. So, for instance, if you needed a nightly import performed, you could create a schedule on your server that would import data, and when your users logged in later, they would see that data, but you couldn't trigger those scripts to be run on the server directly from your client. With Perform Script on Server, you now have that ability. You can, instead of waiting for a schedule to fire off, you can perform that script instantly. Now, in addition to dramatically improving performance, because much less data has to go back and forth between the server, this can also allow remote users to perform tasks that they would not normally have access to. As we mentioned earlier, with FileMaker Go, for instance, and WebDirect, you don't have access to, say, plugins. But if we perform a script on server, the server can access that plugin and then hand the result back to the client after the script is completed. So some possible uses for this. Let's say that you've got a FileMaker Go or a WebDirect solution that you want to use to access a credit card processing plugin. In the past, that was not possible, at least not to do in real time. You might be able to have a schedule that ran on the server and process credit card payments on a scheduled basis, but you couldn't tell it to immediately process and then get the result back. With Perform Script on Server, you can. You might also use it to send emails from the road using a mail server that only accepts connections from the local network. Since these scripts are being performed on the server, if that email is sent as part of one of these scripts, it will be seen as coming from a machine on the local network, and will be able to go through your mail server where it might not be able to from your remote client. And in addition, it's going to improve performance when you create, update, or delete large groups of records. I should say it'll actually improve performance even on individual records. It's just that the performance differences may not be as apparent to the users. Now, there are some limitations with Perform Script on Server. It cannot run all script steps. The script steps that it can run are very similar to what can be run by scheduled scripts. Anything that requires user interaction, for instance, a custom dialog that appears, that's not going to be a step that you're going to be able to run in a script that's run on the server. Also, you cannot run these from a runtime solution, since runtime solutions are not networkable. Let's take a look at how this might work here, for instance. If I go back to my solution here, and I'm going to pull up my iPhone, running FileMaker Go, and I am going to access, I'll open the same thing under Pro Advanced here. I'll share my iPhone screen in just a moment, but I'm going to open file hosted here called contacts. Now this is a very simple file. It's just one table and it's got 120,000 records in it. If I show this from my iPhone here, we can see I've formatted the screen to fit nicely onto the iPhone display. And I've got two scripts here, both of which are going to do a search for all users that are, or all records where the state is California, and delete those records. If we look at the total number of records in the solution, we can see that we've got 120,000 here. And if I perform this as I normally would through FileMaker Go by clicking on the Delete CA button there, this is going to first perform that find, and now it's going to start deleting the 20,000 records that it found. Now this is painfully slow. And part of the reason for that is that the data is being sent back and forth between the server and the client as these are being deleted. I'm going to swipe here to stop that script. And you can see that it did perform the find, and it did get rid of some of the records. But let's see how fast this would have went if I had performed it using perform script on server. So I'm going to open a separate but identical file hosted on my server. We can see that this one has 120,000 records, and this time I'm going to hit that delete CA-PSOS button. It's going to do the same search. And we're done. So you can see it does take just a moment for the found count to update down there in my list. But the actual records are already gone. So what gave us a pretty lengthy status dialog there a second ago from FileMaker Go, even when I was performing that from a iPhone that was on the local area network with the server, when we performed this using perform script on server, that was extremely quick. Now that's a pretty simple example, but I think it's a pretty effective one. The other features that you can use this for, I could have used that to create related records. I could have used it to, as I said, access plugins through this. But the great thing about this new script step is that we don't have to think about it as only being for FileMaker Go or WebDirect. We can actually use this in any script that's accessed from regular FileMaker Pro. So let me go on ahead and discontinue there. And just to demo that, I will do the same thing here from WebDirect. So if I go back to my WebDirect homepage, I'm going to select that contacts file, which I also shared out over WebDirect. This is the first one I accessed. You can see that a few of the records did get deleted through FileMaker Go. And if I go to access that here, I get a much faster performance through WebDirect since it's performing that on the server. All right. So up to this point, we have asked you guys to enter any questions that you had through your interface there on GoToWebinar, so that Greg could keep an eye on those. And Greg, do we have any questions that have come in from the group?
Yeah, Alan, we've got a lot of great questions here. So first of all, just one clarification. Someone pointed out that I think you mentioned that the WebKit rendering engine is used in all of those browsers that are supported by WebDirect, and actually Internet Explorer does not use WebKit, so they just wanted to point that out.
Okay, sorry about that.
But several questions. So can FileMaker Go clients connect to a database hosted with FileMaker Pro?
Yes, they can. Up to 5 connections off of FileMaker Pro. Similar to the way that you can host that file out to other FileMaker Pro users. So your number of connected users is pretty small, but you can use that, say, for testing.
Okay, great. So are the connection licenses for FileMaker Server, are those concurrent licenses, or are they do you have to have one for every user that might connect?
That is a good thing about them. They are concurrent use licenses, so they're not tied to a specific device. Whereas your licenses for FileMaker Pro, you purchase that copy of FileMaker Pro and it goes on a specific computer, but with the concurrent connection licenses for server, you buy a pool of licenses, and those can be used by any user that connects.
Okay. You said the layout mode is not supported in WebDirect, but there's a question, can you still select different layouts?
You can, assuming that in FileMaker Pro or Pro Advanced, you have enabled those layouts to be shown in the layout pop-up here. So for instance, in this context file, if I go to the Manage Layouts dialog, right now from WebDirect I can see both Layout 1 and Layout 2, and I can jump to both of those. While I can't go into layout mode there, I can still access them through the pop-up as long as they are selected here. If, however, in Pro or Pro Advanced, I deselect one of those, once I exit that layout, it's not going to kick me off the layout since I was already on there, but once I exit it, that Layout 2 is no longer an option from my pop-up in WebDirect.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about printing and save as PDF with WebDirect?
Yeah, so printing is a little bit of a problematic issue with any web-based interface. The problem here is that, unlike with FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Go, we don't have complete control over the tool that's being used to render the interface. So any changes, Chrome may render differently, say, than Safari. And it's going to have different printing abilities and a different printing interface. I guess I don't exactly know Was there something specific about printing there that they were asking, or just printing in general?
No, they just literally asked to discuss printing and save as PDF and what the limitations are there with WebDirect.
Yeah, so with WebDirect, you don't have an option to save as PDF or to export as PDF here. So the I don't believe there's any way, at least using the built-in menus, that you can save out a PDF from WebDirect.
Okay. Is it possible to generate PDFs from the server and save it into a container field?
Yes, that is definitely possible.
Oh, wait. From FileMaker server and a server-side script, I don't believe that is possible, but you could use a client machine to generate those and save them into a container field.
Yes, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there.
Okay.
So you could do something. Years ago, it used to be a pretty common practice to use what we'd call, say, a robot machine or a drone, where since we didn't have access to run scheduled scripts, we have a machine stuck in a closet somewhere that had FileMaker Pro running and logged in, and perform scheduled scripts from the server. They replace much of the functionality of those drones used to perform, but there are still a few things that cannot be done through the server. The easiest way to see what script steps are incompatible from the server are to go to the Manage Scripts dialog, go to any script, and down here under Show Compatibility, if you set this to Server, you'll notice that some of the script steps get grayed out here. So any of these that are grayed out are not supported from server, either with a scheduled script or using perform script on server. Now, there are a few exceptions here. For instance, send email. If we look at that one, it's going to show as not grayed out, but that will be somewhat dependent upon the options that you choose. So it's supported from the server side if you're, say, sending it through an SMTP server, but not if you're trying to send through an email client, which it does warn you about over here.
Okay, great. So we've got lots more questions coming in. Chances are we're not going to be able to cover all of these questions. If we don't get to your specific question, feel free to email us at info@skeletonkey.com, and we'll do what we can to answer your questions. Several people have asked, will this be made available as a recording? And yes, it will be available on the FileMakerAcademy.com website. All of the past sessions have been recorded and are out there, and we'll add this one just as soon as we can. So a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap things up, Alan. For a two-server setup that you described, do you need to purchase a second copy of FileMaker Server?
No, that uses the same license. So the servers are joined together when you do that. So you can't, say, join that web publishing engine to a separate database server engine, or by that I mean one that's using a different license key. So one single copy of server, of FileMaker Server, I should say, but it's just distributed over two machines.
Okay, and there's a question about XML web publishing, and that is still supported in FileMaker Server 13, right?
It is. We, due to the limitations just of a webinar running in an hour, we did not really have time to talk about XML web publishing. Another thing that we really didn't have time to get into, which is technically another way to access data, would be ODBC access to your database. I probably shouldn't go too far afield on this if the question was just whether it's still supported, but yes, it is.
Okay, great. So let's just take one more and then we'll wrap this up. So is there a way to use a mobile device offline from the database? So is there can you describe how you might do that if you wanted to take a copy of a database offline?
Yes, that is certainly possible. You can create some kind of synchronization method so that you enter data on the mobile device and then synchronize those records with your server. And you could do that as kind of a roll your own set of scripts, but there are some excellent products out there that make that much easier for you. One that we've used pretty frequently is MirrorSync from 360works that kind of does a lot of the setup and script creation for you so that you can create those records on your mobile device, synchronize them with your server, and allow multiple users to do that so that you're all able to pass data back and forth without having a live connection to the server.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alan. Do you have any information about next month's session?
Yes, thank you for the reminder there. Next month's session, and there are also, if you look at the recording, we do have a few additional resources here that you can look at for more info on WebDirect. But next month's session for FileMaker FM Academy is going to be Design Awesome Applications with FileMaker Themes, and our presenter is going to be John Mathewson, President of Geologic. That's going to be on December 16th at 2, and this session is going to be geared towards developers who want to know more about themes and styles, managers who want to know how to optimize performance, and FileMaker users who want to improve their user experience.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate you spending time with us.
Thanks.